water. I want everybody to kind of sit back in their chairs. I want you to imagine a really tough situation. Imagine you're in the hospital and the doctor tells you you have a brain tumor. They tell you you only have 6 months to live. From there, you do more research. You find out that you're going to full brain radiation, what's going to lead to your hair on your scalp falling off, multiple degree, like first degree burns on your head, and your quality of life is done as you know it. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there for 6 more months, you're going to suffer, your quality of life is going to decrease, and you might end up going into a hospice. Some people decide that they would rather take their life than to keep ongoing suffering. That's called dying with dignity. Over the last few weeks and the last few months, most of you have probably been on Facebook and heard of the story of Brittany Maynard, where she was diagnosed with a brain tumor by her doctors, and they gave her basically 6 months to live. She wanted to make the decision on her own to end her life. It wasn't, and her thing, and her op-ed on CNN that I actually have pulled up, I do not want to die, but I am dying, and I want to die on my own terms. This isn't what she wanted to do, but she felt as a person and as a human being, she deserved this right to decide of whether she wanted to keep on suffering and keep on going, or if she wanted to die on all her own terms and die the way she wanted to. Now, to a lot of us, this might seem as a very taboo topic, because we don't like to face death. We don't like to think of people taking their lives in order to make themselves better. But in a sense, this is allowing that person to choose their own path and allowing them to choose death with dignity. And so in order to kind of figure out what this is all about and to support future bills that are being introduced in multiple states in 2016, you must first understand what it means to die with dignity, the history of our country and the world of dying with dignity and euthanasia, and then basically why. So first, the idea of the right to die with dignity started off as euthanasia. That's basically choosing to end your own life. And then it kind of started progressing on in like the 90s as the right to die. And now a lot of groups are more supportive of the idea of the right to die with dignity because it's more of the person's aspect and not us telling them what to do. The way that they can end their life is basically by ending their life support, turning off the machines, or basically taking medicine that would progress their death a lot faster. There are many groups in the U.S. that actually do support this legislation. A Pew Research study actually found that 70% of Americans believed that there are circumstances that a patient has that would allow them to end their life with dignity. Groups like Death with Dignity National Center and Final Exit Network have worked in many states to pass right to die legislation. They are actually the ones who are basically behind Oregon's right to die with dignity measures and Montana's Supreme Court cases. The right to die has actually been debated in American politics for many decades. The idea of euthanasia first began in 5 BC with the ancient Greeks and Romans as a support for the idea. As soon as when Christianity, Judaism, and Catholicism began to spread throughout Europe, that idea began to get pushed down. So it was basically turned off. Not a lot of people thought about it. Then, as the Enlightenment came through, started sparking that interest again about it. In America, euthanasia was first debated since 1825. New York was the first state to make it illegal, and after it was outlawed, many supporters tried to come forward and try to support more bills, but it was basically failed. In the 20th century, in 1937, the Voluntary Euthanasia Act was introduced in the Senate, and it was ended. Fast forward to the 90s, though. In the 1990, the Supreme Court issued a ruling allowing people to refuse medical help in Congress. They have the right to refuse the service for any help that they could get. So if you got into a major car accident, you could, if you felt like you wanted to and your body was able to tell them that, you could tell them that you don't want their service. And then in that same year, Congress actually passed the Self-Determination Act, which states that hospitals who receive federal funds from our government must tell patients they can actually refuse service. So that was another push towards the right to die with dignity. But in 1977, the Supreme Court issued that there is no right to die. But then 11 years later, in 2006, the U.S. court upheld Oregon's Death with Dignity Act. So they kind of started facing each other off. but they basically allowed states to make that own decision. And as of 2014, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Vermont, and New Mexico all passed death with dignity measures. So now we all must wonder, why does everyone have the right to die? In my family, this actually came to last year when my aunt, she had a lot of problems growing up, and her brain was basically deteriorated by drugs, and they were telling her and she had a lot of problems, but they told her she only had 6 months to live. She lived in Missouri. They don't have a law for that, but I just remember those 6 months seeing her and talking about it with my dad that she was not in the right state of mind. She wasn't herself. She lost her humanness throughout that whole process leading up to that final day. But basically, this should be given to every person when faced with a terminal illness that faces suffering and pain. It would basically decrease the amount of money that these people go through. My family was faced with enormous hospital bills from my aunt, and basically choosing to not be on life support anymore and to not keep the process of keeping you alive when you no longer see the point of it should be ended, should help the families out tremendously. Now, there are many concerns with this. First, people say that the right to die violates their religious beliefs. That is a very notable reason why you would not support this. I respect that, but in some measures, every person has the right to choose what they want to do with their lives and should not be dictated by other people. And then another people believe that the right to die leads to a slippery slope of people promoting suicide. I could see that concern also, but in the end, there are many rules that are set up in all states, basically requiring 2 doctor's notices, 6 months to live basically from all doctors, and that it shows that that person is going to be suffering the next 6 months, and that is how you'd be able to be able to have the choice to end your life. So then, every day, people are faced with life-threatening illnesses, and when you have that, you have to make the decision of what is best for yourself and what is best for your family. And if you feel, like Emily Maynard did, that you can no longer go on, that you want to make the process easier for you and your family, you should be able to decide what you want to do with your life. So in the next few years, every person must realize that suffering must not be prolonged and that to support right to die measures in their own home states. Thank you.